due to the conference I mean, around 60 to 80% of our lifetime we spend it indoors. We live actually in buildings, we spend our times in the buildings, so we are really difficult of what we want and how we want our indoor environment to be. Therefore, the decision makers start to understand and have as main pillars during their designing stage and also their refurbishment stages the needs of the occupants and the indoor environment. And when we're referring to a refurbishment of the buildings, we actually need to consider the two types of buildings that they do exist, the residential and the non-residential ones. Especially when we're referring to non-residential buildings, we should consider that they are around a quarter of the main buildings that they do exist. And from those, 30%, the majority, are office buildings, places that we visit every day. So our main goal is none other, as we have already seen, the creation of a smart building. A building that is, yes, it's energy efficient, yes, it has a flexibility, yes, it can has the criteria of safety and security, but also is in line with our comfort and what we want it to be for us. And when we are referring to comfort, we should not only think of thermal comfort with the main indicators of PMV and PPD indexes. We should also look at lighting, sound, and also indoor air quality. After a small review of what others are doing regarding the evaluation of during an in-situ monitoring, we have noticed that the main parameters actually that they specify and evaluate during their analysis are, as you can see in this table, the air temperature and relative humidity, the CO2 concentration levels, the air velocity, the lighting levels, and in recently the last decades, the PMV and PPD indexes. What was actually the outcome of this initial analysis was that the most popular parameters under evaluation were those three: the indoor air temperature, relative humidity, and air quality. And when we are referring to air quality, mainly we are specifying the CO2 concentration levels. Another thing that should outline regarding the relative humidity is that it's the second most popular indicator of indoor environment conditions, and we should not overlook it because in certain cases, such as the printing areas in case of office buildings, the existence or not of the relative humidity levels do affect greatly the final product that is creating, the printing phase. Taking all those into consideration, we conducted an evaluation in an existing building, and our main objective was initially the determination and presentation of the existing indoor conditions regarding air temperature and relative humidity, and also the indoor air quality. This building under evaluation was established in Thessaloniki. It is the Deloglu Fine Arts Foundation. It has a variety of spaces that we'll see afterwards, and its main climate is Mediterranean, a typical Mediterranean city actually. Regarding the building, it was constructed in 1997 to 1999. It has a special characteristic of architecture, as you can see from the picture. It complies with the national thermal insulation requirements of the year that it was constructed. It features a then state-of-the-art HVAC system, and regarding its operation characteristics, it has office areas and exposition area, convention areas, a restaurant and cafe, and a printing office area. During our evaluation, we specified through special equipment the CO2 concentration levels, the temperature and relative humidity levels, and all those measurements were carried out for around a month during the winter period. Let's move on to the results so that I will be quick. Initially, you can see for the whole under evaluation period the indoor air temperature conditions at the up of the graph and down the outdoor temperature conditions. The three under evaluation areas were two office areas and one office area with a 3D printer inside. So we need to consider very much all those three parameters. Based on the graph that we saw, I'm presenting you actually, we can see that in certain cases we have a marginal limit of the air temperature regarding to the National Institutional Framework recommendations. But when we are looking especially to a 24-hour analysis during a typical weekday, we can see that we are in line with those recommendations, and therefore we can specify the indoor conditions as satisfactory. Moving on to the relative humidity, in this case we have the problem. As you can see, the relative humidity levels are really extremely low. They vary to 5 to 25% during the whole under-evaluation period, and therefore this fact have a really negative effect on the occupants' comfort and work experience during their stay in the building. And this also appears during a typical weekday. We can see exceptionally low levels of relative humidity. And after an in-situ auditing that we do ourselves, we noticed that the 3 out of the 4 humidifiers that they did exist there were not functioning. And nobody have ever noticed that before us. And the final parameter now is the CO2 concentration levels. Once again, we can see that for the whole period we can specify a pleasant indoor environment, as the CO2 concentration levels vary from 350 to 600 ppm. And also, during a typical weekday, once again, we cannot overlap the threshold of 1000 ppm as determined by the ASHRAE 62.1. Concludingly, I was fast, let's say that. We can specify that the documentation on the evaluation of the indoor conditions, especially in non-residential buildings, is really important, as just even one parameter can really affect our perception of comfort and well-being during our stay in those type of buildings. Secondly, regarding our analysis, we determined exceptionally low relative humidity levels, something that we don't see every day in certain cases, and when we do not understand that this is the case. We mainly say, yes, we have a dry throat, yes, my head is aching, and everybody thinks that it is the CO2 concentration levels. It's not always this case. There are other parameters that we should consider and evaluate each and every time. Thank you very much for your time.